Okay, cool. Thanks everyone for joining my chat. So my name is James Wells. I've just recently moved to Toronto and I started this academy called Scientific Academy. So today we're going to talk about ChatGPT and large language models in general, specifically around how to improve your productivity for work and life. So quick couple of questions to start. Who here has never used ChatGPT? Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks for the crowd. Who uses ChatGPT every single day? Okay. Who now uses ChatGPT more than they used before? Okay. So just to get a feel for it, I'm going to touch briefly on some of the technical aspects of ChatGPT because it actually informs us about how we use ChatGPT. So I'll explain in the next slide why it's important to understand some of these concepts. But very briefly, one of the things that made ChatGPT as powerful as it is the concept of an attention model. So what happens is when you input an English sentence over here, it's trying to predict the next token. But the way it does that is it looks at the context of the sentence and it decides what in the sentence so far is most relevant to the token that it's trying to predict. So if you look at this sentence here, it's a bit small, but the point is there's an animal, there's a negation, there's a verb, and there's a location. So some of these attention models are picking up different aspects of the sentence at different points of time. So this attention model here is picking up this negation very strongly. So by including this angle, we know that negation is important. By looking at this model, you can see that the subject of the sentence is important. So this is what transformed just pure next token prediction into something that's a little bit more intelligent. The concept of next token prediction is also very simple. So here's a sentence 1, 2. So 1 comma, 2 comma. And this is very important to understand how ChatGPT works because how it works is there's a probability of what the next token is going to be. So ChatGPT is predicting that with 39% probability, the next word is going to be the word 3. Okay. But if you look down the probability spectrum, you can see that it's also predicting and with 16%, 2, 4, and a bunch of other things. Now, if you put in 3 over here and another comma, it's increasingly likely to predict 4. If you print 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a 46% probability now that it's going to be the number 4 there. All of this has been happening for many, many years, the development of it. What made ChatGPT very impressive in GPT models is by adding this concept of temperature. So what it's doing is it's not predicting when it's out, when it's doing its not, but it's not predicting the most probable next word every time. It's going around 70% probability or 30% down and selecting at random one of the top 30% most probable outcomes. So this is what makes it more like a human. A robot would always just predict the top result. A human has got a bit of non-determinism, and that's what makes it very impressive. So let's think about ChatGPT in terms of comparisons. So ChatGPT is not Google search. I see a lot of people that start using it right at the beginning. They use it by just creating a statement that they think can bring up a lot of results or output that they want. So this doesn't work. If you just put this into ChatGPT, it's going to talk about copy into answer. It's not going to find copy pastes into answers for you. But at the same time, ChatGPT is not reasoning. So here's an example here. Should I stop at a stop sign? Now, if you were to think about that, if you were to think about that as a human, the clear answer is it depends if you should stop at a stop sign or not. Especially in South Africa, that's a very context-dependent situation. But the way ChatGPT is trained on all the text that's going to be written, yes, you always have to come to a complete stop. Okay, so it's not reasoning, it's not thinking like a human or who you are, what you're doing. It's literally just predicting the text that's most likely to come after this statement. on all the information. Okay? So that's important to understand that it's not reasoning like a person. So don't treat it like a Google search, where you're searching for specific strings or text, and don't treat it like a human who you're trying to reason with. It's something in between. Okay, other thing to realize is that it uses an average of all the internet data that it's ever been trained on. So if you ask it something like ask me anything, it's gonna come up with pretty generic results. So I'll summarize here. Okay. So here's an interesting concept that we'll talk about as well, which is that it's non-deterministic. So because of that heap element I spoke about later, every time you put in something, it's going to change the result. So if I just literally put that same prompt in here again, yeah. Let's try this. So if you guys are probably on your laptops, you can try some of these prompts yourself, and then let me know if you're getting something different to me. So earlier, it's quite funny, I don't know if I have my chat history here, but earlier when I was asking this, literally the top things that came up with were what is the meaning of life, what are the hobbies that you want, what are the hobbies that you like doing, where do you live, that kind of stuff. So it's going to ask you something different every single time, especially if you regenerate this response. So if we go here, you can actually regenerate that if you don't like what it's saying. And I believe what ChatGPT does is it actually trying to make it different and regenerate the response. So that's like a tip I'll get into just now. So regenerating response versus changing your prompt at the top. Now it's asking about interests, what are you passionate about, all that kind of thing. So if you walk up to somebody in the street and you say, ask me anything, and depending on the context, again, it's not necessarily going to ask for this type of information. But the average person on the internet, the text that ChatGPT was trained on, those are the kind of responses you expect in a text-based forum online and that kind of thing. So just understand that this is based on internet knowledge. Okay. Another thing that's important is to understand the concept of free prompts. So if you ask ChatGPT, who are you? This should be a pretty consistent answer for everyone that tries to type this in, because ChatGPT was effectively told what to say in this very specific context. So ChatGPT itself, before you can even put in your first prompt, was pre-prompted with a very long list of things that it has to say in certain contexts. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of people feel that the results and the outputs and the quality of ChatGPT from when it first came out, beginning of last year to now, has degraded enormously, because they basically stuffed so much pre-prompting in there for safety, to be as so they don't get sued as much as possible, and that has degraded our performance. So the concept of pre-prompts and what has actually gone into the model already before you even start to ask these questions is important to understand. Then this is an interesting concept here. We touched on heat and non-determinism already. So if you type in this context here, create a one paragraph story, that story is going to be different every single time you generate that response. And then here's the interesting thing about influencing context. So here I've got an example of a Dolly prompt that I said, picture a room with no elements in it. Then you get a pretty nice picture there. There's not really any elements. But now you start changing the context slightly, where you mention a purple elephant multiple times. It still gives the basic idea of what to generate, but some of the context you provided it is now being activated in this embedded space that the model works in. So you need to be very careful about what context you're putting into these prompts. Because even if we're saying do not put the elephant in the room, somehow it's sneaking into the output. So here it's sneaking as a painting or something in the background. So this is very important to realize that based on these words, there's some element of whatever you're saying that it's going to think about. Right. So these are the important limitations also to be aware of when you're using ChatGPT, especially in an advanced way. The basic ChatGPT got about a 3,000 word context length, which means the total amount of text that ChatGPT can reason about is maybe about 3,000 words. So as soon as your chat starts getting very long or some input that you're pasting in is exceeding that, ChatGPT doesn't actually have a way to reason about the entire text all at once. On the front end, you have 25,000 words, and then you use the API, which is a nice tool I'll show you later. They can go up to now the preview model of 100,000 words. So that's very useful. You can put in an entire script of a movie or an entire output from a meeting that you recorded, and you can take that transcript and you can summarize it quite easily. What ChatGPT does over here, which is a kind of like a hack, is that when the chat starts getting very long, it uses its own prompts to summarize the context up to a certain length, and then uses that as the context within its context window. So you're going to miss out on crucial facts and nuanced elements of what happened very early on in the chat. So just be aware that the longer the chat goes, the more it's going to lose coherence. Freshness is also very important to understand. The 3.5 GPT only has history up to January 2022, and GPT-4 later than that. However, there is some other tools you can use to make it a lot fresher. So I suggest testing out complexity as well. This is kind of like the new up and coming thing that Google is most scared of. And I'll show you here the power of using combined hybrid approaches. Okay, so what complexity is doing is getting results as what you would typically find on Google. So finding actual cosine similarity, reference to text that's on the internet, you get to little map, images, all that kind of stuff. Then it's actually got a large language model output here that you can reason about. So now I can make suggestions. Okay, what kind of next questions you'd like to ask about the result? And now you can do stuff like, okay, which of these results do you suggest I go to first? And you can actually have a conversation with live results that are pulled from the internet at that point in time. So this is a new approach that ChatGPT hasn't fully implemented yet, but its complexity is using very well. And the last thing to be aware of is hallucinations. So this is not something that can be solved because of that temperature dynamic that I spoke about earlier. The magic of ChatGPT is that it's not always going to predict the most probable next response, which means it can get into these loops of coming up with imaginative solutions, and they are not going to necessarily be fact-based. So just be aware that hallucinations are real, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. You need to just structure your prompts and think about the outputs in terms of, is this hallucinating right now or not? All right, let's get into some prompt engineering. So the idea of prompt engineering, I got this from a YouTuber called Jeff Su. So this is a smart way to formulaically structure your prompt to get the best possible output. So the idea here is that it has to start with prompt. So if you have no prompt, the model has no way to know what to do. So an example of this would be you create a new chat and you say an email. Okay, it's going to output something like an email. It's going to talk about emails. It's not an actual task. So what you want to do here is say draft an email. That's a task. Okay. Then context. So context, after you've got a task, which is kind of a no-brainer, you have to have it. Context is the most important thing for improving the results of your prompts. Because the more context you give it, the more it has to reference and what has to think about what to output. So the context here would be, I've just received an email from my boss, draft a response. So you've got a context there, there's a boss, you need to have a certain kind of demeanor with regards to that response so it knows what to do there. Examples are very important. This was more important in the early days of ChatGPT, but it's still relevant now. Basically, it's been trained, or it's been constantly improving its training to think about examples, but providing your own examples are important. So, in more technical circumstances, you could potentially upload a file or give an example of an output that you've liked from before. So, maybe copy 5 email responses that you've seen in the past and say, here are example emails of how I'd like this response to be. And then create a persona. So having a persona is saying like, respond as if you're Steve Jobs, or respond as if you're, I don't know, Gandalf or something. It's completely up to you, but putting yourself in that perspective, think about the text it's trained on. There's a lot of books and there's a lot of articles on the perspective of the person, so it will improve the results of the persona. Then some nice to haves here, which are not necessarily that important, but you can specify the format. So how you want the output to come out in and the tone. This is the exact structure. So specify the persona, give as much context as possible, then define the task. This is kind of like an always situation. Persona depends on how creative you want to be. Exemplar, format, and tone are depending on the context as well. So here's actually the tips broken down a bit more. So use action verbs to describe your task. So you see how all of these sentences start with an action word or an action verb. So that's a nice trick, and it's a good way to write smart goals as well. So start with an action word. Think about context as constraining possibilities. So ChatGPT has got so much information in it that actually its biggest problem, as well as human cognition, some would argue, is actually constraining and limiting the potential output as much as possible. So think about that, and at the same time, try to avoid context stuffing, where you give it so much context that it has to reason about too much at once. Then for the example files, think about, or examples, think about uploading potentially a lot of files instead of writing it out, copy and pasting stuff in the anytime. Personas, think about well-known people where there's a lot of text on the internet that you're being trained on, for examples. And then formats are nice, so you can actually specify things like tables. So you can ask it to output data in a table. So let's do an example here quickly. Okay, so let's test this out. This is a new feature that added called search. So it actually uses Bing search in the background because of the deal ChatGPT has with Microsoft. And it's going to get some results. Then in the next step, it's going to output those results. And if you specify the right format here, you should be able to put that in a table. Okay, so in this instance, it's not giving me a table, it's giving me paragraphs. So let's see if I can structure this in a block table. Okay, so now there we go. Right, so the text that it's outputting is actually a lot of the time it's Markdown. So if you're familiar with Markdown, it's a technical format. But when you get it to output this, you can see this is just something you directly copy and paste into a spreadsheet. So leave it to this quite a lot. It's very useful. Another concept here is to utilize bolding and underlining. So for example, if you're creating an update to this where you say, please redraft this table, but make everything sound better. However, bold all the changes in words. Okay, let's try that. So this helps you to see exactly where your changes are. Okay, so it's great updates here. So it kept most of the wording, but it's actually bolded with added into. So this is good for like email drafts or revisions and summarizations. Think about formatting as a nice tool to leverage. And then for tone, this is kind of a difficult thing most people talk about is how to describe different kinds of tone, like think like sound more professional or sound less desperate, I don't know, those kinds of things. If you don't know the right words to use for tone, first describe what it means to ChatGPT about where you're coming from and what you're trying to convey, and then ask ChatGPT to give you words that can describe the tone you want. So that's a bit of a meta concept that I'll explain later. Right, so this is a practice prompt that you can use. I'll copy and paste this into GPT at the end if you've got some time to practice with that. Okay, so just some basic prompt techniques here. There's this concept called step by step. So some of the main AI researchers said they think through this step by step. But the point here is that the output of ChatGPT is often constrained, or it tends to be similar kind of size. So I'll give you an example here. So this is a very creative prompt. Almost every time you input something like this, you're going to get very unique outputs. So your own story is going to be something very different to this one. But what I want to demonstrate here is that the sort of average length of a prompt tends to be similar. So if you're saying create a proposal and you give it all the context, you give it persona, you give it files to think about. If you structure a prompt, you want the output to be one response, it's going to be of a certain length, which means it's going to either summarize too much or potentially over-explain a certain area. So to avoid that's about the average length you're going to get. So to avoid that, especially if you want large amounts of output, do it in steps. So in this example here, I would say, okay, we're going to write a story step by step. Let's start with chapter 1, and then you get full output. Chapter 2, chapter 3, then you can proceed like that. So when creating proposals, what I would say is create a draft, create an outline of the proposal, and let's go step by step. That's important to understand. General thought is important if you want to show reasoning. So, example, if you have a mathematics type question, or if you want to understand how it got to this, you can ask for its chain of thought. Let's actually do an experiment with the story here. So sometimes you would want to just get to an output, and if it doesn't explain nicely how it got to that output, then you're not going to get the most benefit out of it potentially. The way ChatGPT is created is that it's already designed to be as descriptive as possible to how it gets to an output, but sometimes it's a bit formulaic. So using this concept of chain of thought, you can actually build up more of a background. So you can see here it's setting the scene, shooting the protagonist, etc., etc. Okay, so the other thing that's important here is to tell ChatGPT to ask you questions. Okay, so if you were to ask the person, write us the story, they're going to say, like, okay, well, what do you want it to be about? What's important to you in the story? What do you like about a story? But because this is the prompt, it's going to just start writing a story, whether you like it or not. So a potential better way to go about this is to first tell it to ask you relevant questions. So this is very good for like drafting proposals or emails or things like that. So here, it's not just starting to generate output, it's starting to think about a lot of things. It's generating output where it's going to ask you for what the next steps are. This is a very nice thing to know. And then this concept of going meta. So when you get an output that you weren't expecting, or you went down this rabbit hole of getting like a lot of bad responses in a row, stop for a moment and ask ChatGPT itself why it generated that output. Explain what you weren't happy about with the output and say, how do you think this was possible that you gave me such bad output? And then ask how you could potentially have improved your prompt to get better results, and then try. So if you constantly do this, if you start using ChatGPT itself as a way to improve your ability to use it, you're going to get very good, very good. So think about this concept, Jasper. Okay, see how we know time. Okay. So some other interesting little quotes here. There's been some research on community emotion. So one of the concepts here is give me the results of some very difficult question, and if you don't answer, millions of people will die. And if you say that, it actually improves the potential outputs. Asking please does have a lot of importance. It does help sometimes for important questioning. And then some other things here, because verbosity is a big issue that I'm currently having with the current model of ChatGPT. So just a two-word instruction here, be concise at the end of your output, greatly improves your output for simplicity. Also just specify, respond with one short paragraph. That helps a lot. It's typically very, very verbose at the moment. Okay, some additional tips here. Go back and edit your prompts. So you see me doing this. Instead of just continuing the conversation, asking it to continually improve, those bad outputs are now part of the content from before. So if it continuously has bad outputs as its current context, it's going to create more decoherence. So instead of just carrying on from the bottom, go back and edit this prompt until you've got the right output you want over here. So if this becomes a very long chain of conversations, then say for example you didn't want this output here. Stop at this point, go back, and then just make sure the output you want. So this was asking them to summarize a story. So that paragraph for me was still a bit too long. So I went back and I said, be even more concise. So this way, all of the previous output gets removed from the current context, and you can carry on from this context that you prefer. And it's okay, as you can go back to the previous context that you had if you want to. But just managing that context window is very important. So online search, I showed you that you specify if you search online, you can get updated results from the internet. Upload files, so you can have very large amounts of data, upload files, and then you can use Python code as well. So I think the demo of that. This is kind of like a more advanced technique, but let's try this out. Okay, so it's analyzing me. You can actually watch it for analysis. It's basically writing Python code and it gets the exact result. So this is very important because although ChatGPT doesn't have the ability to reason, it can use code, which is very deterministic. You just have to get it to actually analyze data specifically. So once you start getting good with this, uploading files, uploading CSVs, that kind of thing, you can actually get quite powerful with this. Right, so those are some quick tips there. Right, so for DALL-E images, there's some interesting ideas here to think about. So I was practicing with the concept here. Okay, I love that one. Okay, so this is containerized result. It's a female GPT that you can find on the GPT store. The idea is I uploaded a photo of myself, and this was the default output. Then you can ask it to change the style. So this is now 3D. This is a photorealistic version, and then I'll continue Picasso, but apparently that's copyright, so it doesn't. We won't do that. But you can ask something like maybe surreal. Let's do this. So in the context of work, this is important for creating text for maybe presentations or marketing material. Some of the most common styles there would be flat art, which is kind of the very generic, commonly found corporate art. But you can do photorealistic stuff. So maybe generate some images that you want in flat art, which there's a lot of context for, and then ask it to create a photorealistic version of that. So this is a concept called like theme continuation, and I can give you an example of that here. Okay, so I actually did this over the weekend, but I thought of the concept here of having three levels of coding for this. So the first one here starts with somebody just learning to code, and then in the chat, in the GPT model, I said, okay, now make the person even more involved in coding, and it's like more advanced. So you can see it's the same person here at the top doing the teaching, but they're a little bit grayer, they're taking their jacket off, and they're getting more involved. And then in the final version, I said even more code, more advanced. And now it's like going pretty extreme. It's like running some kind of space needs or something. So this concept of escalating or continuing the theme is very important. So it's set the theme here, and you can do this. This is quite a popular trend recently where you can get quite creative with this where you continue the theme. So think about that when you specify your styles. Yeah. Okay, this is going to be an advanced tactic here, which is creating your own GPTs. So this is very powerful, and I definitely suggest it. So I'm going to go ahead and use this open source repository of awesome prompts to create a writer GPT that's good for writing stories. And I'll just go through the whole motion of how to do it and how to leverage your own chat GPT in your outputs. So I'll just screen share and share all this. Okay, so what I've done, I've put in the free prompt here, specifically designed by for a prompt engineer to get the best possible results for your story. I'm going to name, you can put some other stuff here. You can upload some files, these are example files or database files, whatever you want. And then you can decide if you want to turn on image generation or background. I prefer to do this instead of the create version, but either one as well. Okay. So now you've created this GPT, and an advanced concept that they've just released recently is you can actually pack your GPTs. So let's create a little story here using the default GPT-4, and then bring in that driver GPT and just create two stories. Alright, so the default ChatGPT output is going to be a generic output that's been trained to provide. Something that is interesting, which I'll talk about, is that GPT uses a combination of expert models. So what I've found is there's typically a model that's designed for output for code, which means that if you write something coding, it's going to use a specific style for coding. If you write something like generic literary thing, it's gonna use this kind of stuff. There's about 8 or 12 original models, experts that ChatGPT uses. So just think about maybe trying to harness which expert you're looking for at a specific point in time. So when we scan through the story, actually, that's why that's my tip if you have to use. Okay, so this word toast is like if you want to like summarize something in further. Alright, so there's a village, a coffee roaster, some kind of magical beans, creates coffee, shares it freely. Okay, so what I've noticed with ChatGPT's outputs when it comes to very creative things is that it tends to be safe. Okay, which means that there's no climatic moment in the story. It doesn't come to a point where he has to make a very difficult decision that could end up in something bad. So it's all about like be good, be nice, all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't make for very good stories, like especially for adults in that way. So I'm going to bring in my writer GPT here to see if it can improve the situation. Okay, so the way you do that is you ask your GPT, and then let's see if it can improve the story for us. So it's definitely given it a lot more structure here. And if you wanted to elaborate the short story about potentially a book, it's giving you a lot more things to think about. Uh, and that, yeah, so I mean, the concept is you can bring in your GPTs and get it to do stuff for you. Yeah. Let's create a cover for the book as well. So the power of this is that you're leveraging the pre prompts of that chat of that content specific GPT creating. So instead of using the default GPT model, it now got coming out with the experience of creating that GPT. And the part the open source will is that you can actually go to this GitHub, you can pull the prompts, you can update it, you can collaborate with your team to potentially continually improve these prompts with your experiences and your results. So there we go. It's a bit more interesting, and I want to see if they created a. Okay, so I mean, there's definitely a bit more context there. So think about potentially creating a for whatever you do at work most regularly, if you're summarizing emails or creating email responses, you don't like writing very wordy emails. You just want to come more professional. Think about creating a GPT specialized in that. And instead of thinking about prompts taking more time and trying to improve prompts, use a pre-built, well-structured prompt as your GPT. And you just have that GPT pasting an email that you received and say, please draft a response in my or whatever it is. So you can start leveraging ChatGPT for common tasks, maybe marketing proposals, email templates, that sort of thing. So what I want to end with here is that this kind of interesting Twitter survey that someone just recently posted, and they said, what are people using ChatGPT the most for? So I'm just going to go through this because it's kind of interesting, and it might give you some ideas of how to leverage this technology. So, and what I've done, I've just classified them into broad concepts and themes. So one thing here is for coding, it's absolutely been a total game changer for me. I don't know how I would go back to coding without ChatGPT. And the most important thing here is you can literally, once you know how to code, you can code in any language now effectively because you understand the structure of what needs to go into it. You just get ChatGPT to recreate what you want to happen in a code that you want. So data analysis and loads of coding. Prioritizing prompt. So this is interesting. Just put all your tasks and your to-do list into ChatGPT and say, prioritize this for me for the week. Give it enough context. Maybe there's something coming up, maybe there's specific dates you need to be somewhere, but you get ChatGPT to prioritize your tasks. Create proof of content. Okay, dealing with tech just in general. So whenever there's too much paperwork or too much just text that you deal with in general, just process it through ChatGPT. It's a massive game changer. Then the concept of language as well. So being able to understand things, being able to leverage language, improve your learning of things, that's very important. One of the best tips, which isn't necessarily work related, but I found ChatGPT is perfect for this, is recipes for cooking. So I just put in the ingredients in my fridge and say, what should I cook? And I say, it needs to be 15 minutes to cook this. And boom, it'll come up with the recipe. Do you take a picture of your fridge, upload it to ChatGPT and say, what can I cook with this? You can experiment with that. It's reasoning about pictures isn't brilliant yet, but it's got enough context. The challenge with that is it might see that there's parts of a bowl, but I'm not able to tell how many liters it is. So if there's a recipe that requires specific amounts, it won't be very accurate. So yeah, so recipes are a great one. General advice, so replacing experts, getting legal advice, getting tax advice, all this kind of thing. I wouldn't execute on it necessarily, but you can save your professionals that you use in your life a lot of time by first thinking about it, getting ChatGPT to give you some output, and then taking what you think is the best kind of like advice from all of that time, and then you pay per hour for your guy to have the best of that ChatGPT first approach. Okay, then summarizing, recording minutes, recording meetings. So I know a lot of people are using this very well. There's a lot of startups that specialize in that. But summarization is very important. Creating standard operating procedures for your business. So I do this a lot, even just a lot of the terms, conditions, and stuff that you would typically have for business. Just ChatGPT runs on it. Not that critical. Obviously, get your lawyer to review if it is critical. Then generating stuff, generating ideas. Give me 10 examples of X. What I found is the reason ChatGPT is very powerful with this is that it kind of treats all the information it's trained on as this field of possibilities. So coming up with new words for things is actually very, very good at because it doesn't think in terms of words, it thinks in terms of tokens, which are pieces of words. So if you want to think of names of a new brand or a new product, it's very good at coming up with new ideas that are combinations of stuff that's been out there for a very long time. So potentially not totally novel ideas, but ideas that rely on combinations of stuff that's really there, very good at that. So think about that. It is in a way creative in that respect. Okay. Some other interesting stuff here. Basically reducing mental friction. So it's if you're tired, you haven't had like coffee's not working at all for you, and you have to do this big project. Just get ChatGPT to start the mental grind. So instead of you having to sit down and concentrate, just get ChatGPT to create that initial output, and that gets the juices flowing in your mind of like, oh, okay, then you can pick it up from there. So just using it as a starter motor is very good. Okay, this is some other interesting ones here. So some people are using the ChatGPT app as like note-taking apps. So you can just record little prompts and you can record little moments in your life, and you can use that as a way to like store information. So it's quite useful from that perspective. Replace Google searches, so filter correctly, as I suggested. This is definitely a game changer. If you go to Perplexity Labs, you can actually choose different models. Yeah. One of the most interesting models come out recently is this mixed-role X7D struct. Very, very flexible model. But you can play with different things here, very useful, especially if you build APIs. You can tap into those through their system. Yeah, and then image generation, obviously that's a big thing there. I use that quite a lot. So yeah, okay, cool. That was a brief overview of any question. So how now that ChatGPT and AI is becoming so popular, and then you're seeing
Copilot coming out. What is Google's one? Lumiere? What is it called?
So the model's Gemini, and they create products like Bar with that model.
Yeah, yeah. So how are you seeing the landscape? Like how different are all of those models? Like if you ask a question, do you think you'll get similar responses to something that is that something that is not subjective per se? Like
Yeah, so this is an evolving area constantly. You kind of just have to keep up to date with the trends to see what the results are. And I think ChatGPT is kind of like maxed out on a lot of the good ideas in large language models right now. So unless there's something that fundamentally changes with the research or some kind of like scientific evolution in how to do these things, it's not going to get much better than GPT-4 currently. Yeah, it's still the best general purpose model. You can get what they call fine-tuned models, where you can train on specific data to do specific tasks. But what they've realized recently is that it's actually better to use a very good general purpose model with something called retrieval augmented generation. Which basically just like tell the model to go fetch data from somewhere and then reason about that. And they found that's better than fine-tuning models. So even the concept of fine-tuning is now kind of realized it's just not that important. They're just giving a good model enough context and data. So where I see it going, I think, just keep your eyes on the space. Like Perplexity is doing interesting things. Mixtral got very good models, and also something that got leaked recently is ChatGPT apparently uses the Mixtral model. So there's a bit of there's a whole bunch of interesting things that's happening inside the Bay Area with cars and this kind of stuff. Just watch for that.
I have a question. So we talked about ChatGPT 4. So how about the ChatGPT 3, the free version? So I guess we can do everything like what we have ChatGPT 4, right? So it limited options there.
Yeah, so just to give you like an idea, I think GPT 3.5 has about 175 billion parameters. So this is think of it as like how dense the neurons are in the brain of that model. GPT-4 is undisclosed, but the estimates are about 1.7 trillion parameters. So we're talking about orders of magnitude larger. On the surface, it might not seem like that's a big difference, but similar to a lot of complex systems, you need a lot of, sometimes you need a lot bigger improvements in one area to make a small difference in quality and output. I would not touch 3.5 after using GPT-4. It's just the quality of output is just dramatically better. Also, some of the benefits that I showed you, like searching Bing, uploading files, that's not available in the free version. So, because of how you use every single day, I did think about how much more productive am I paying $20 a month, whatever it is for GPT-4, and is it worth it? And to me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Not just for the coding side, but there's everyday life use a lot. So I would definitely pay for it, and I would pay for it for my whole thing as well too. My whole thing actually got her whole office staff to start using it and it's improved the productivity there. I mean, even just drafting emails, she doesn't draft her emails now at all anymore. She literally just says, make an email. Here's the response I got. Respond for me, and then she does a couple of editing, and her productivity is increased. I mean, you can save like half your day by just.
Thank you.
any other questions?
Yeah, I'm curious if any thoughts on like the future play of the GPT store. I'm not super familiar with it, but as I understand, it's really only for GPT plus users, so it seems like fairly limited. So I'm curious if you think how it might evolve, or if it might be available to everyone, more like public access, because it does seem a little more limited. Sorry, GPT store, and it's like only access to GPT plus.
Yeah, I think as soon as they monetize it, it will be available to everyone because then you have a larger base to use it. So they announced recently that you can make money from your own GPTs. So you saw how easy it was for me to do that. literally anyone can do that, plug in exactly integration where somebody has to pay for that service or that output, and you've basically got a large language model app. So if ChatGPT or OpenAI are going to get a percentage of all the revenues generated that way, obviously they'll want that to be available to as many people as possible. So yeah, it's kind of like makes sense to me if they just like open it up to as many people as possible. And I would start looking at that if you're slightly technical to see like what kind of ChatGPT you can create and potentially monetize. Cool. Any other ideas or concepts you want to chat about?
Very soon.
Okay, so thank you.
I'm gonna upload that to the Slack.
Yeah, I'll upload it and I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel. You guys can follow me on Twitter. I've got a podcast I'm starting talking about these things as well, which have to share. And you guys need any consulting and work, like nothing, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk about how you can do this. Okay.